Hello. Hey, Sridhar. Hello. Hey, Jessica. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? And can you see me? Let's begin. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good, good, good. And can you see my desktop in 3, 2, 1 now?
Yes, I can.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let us begin. Okay. Uh, there was some delay in processing of the video, the last video that we recorded, but that should be available by now. It should be showing up right in the DevOps segment, right here. That's where you should be able to see it. And hello, Sridhar. You should be able to see the video in the usual location, which is right there. Now, yesterday we covered a new technology, which is you already know, Docker. We covered containers. We started just barely scratching the surface, basic usage as to how we use it. But what I want to do now is to help us understand how do we do this in a larger scale. We started like 4 or 5 containers by hand, and I want to do this on a large scale for a practical deployment. So what I intend to do is to introduce you another tool, which is kind of sort of like this tool, or there are others. You already know them. And so I will be talking today about this tool called Ansible, which is somewhat similar with all the other tools that exist in the arena of configuration management, but is actually a little different also in that you have other tools like Puppet and CF Engine, and there are a whole list. You've probably seen that list already on the website, and they all basically do this one thing called desired state configuration management. And there is a tool called DSC from Microsoft that is also not open source, but it's there. And so that's the purpose of these tools all over. And what you will see is this tool is also in the same family, but it is a little different. One of the differences, it is Python based. And the second thing is it doesn't require any additional installation. For example, what I mean to say that by that, what I mean to say is, when you use Chef, you need to install Chef, and then you can run it. Whereas in this case, no such thing needed, not required, which is beautiful, actually, if you think about it, because it just works using the existing libraries that are already found in most systems, most Unix systems. It does require installation on Windows because it is built, this thing uses Python 2 by default, and it uses SSH. That's pretty much it. That's what it takes to run Ansible. And you will see that this tool is delightfully simpler to use compared to Chef. We saw creating, our kitchen. We did those exercises with a Chef repo. You have different names for the same thing. We have cookbooks, we have roles, and this and that. And it's fairly complex ways of dealing with complex infrastructure. And that's a fairly good use scenario for that. And that is useful. But what I'm going to show you is this other tool, which is also kind of interesting, at least to me, because I actually prefer using this tool, the Ansible tool, compared to this tool, just because of its simplicity. To me, it is more intuitive, as if I am using some documentation and I am executing my documentation. It's as simple to think about is you write some documentation and you just execute your documentation. That's how this thing you have to think about. So you write whatever you want in terms of plain documentation, and you just run it, or rather I should say play it, because the documentation needs to be written in form of playbook, and it is fairly simple to write. It is written in YAML format. This YAML thing is, what is YAML? So let's go read. YAML is, what is it? It is, okay, that's like a negative definition, negative. So it says YAML, by the way, it's a recursive negative definition. Recursive meaning it is, doesn't actually expand itself, but is the first letter Y stands for what? YAML. And YAML stands for what? YAML. Okay, that's how it is recursive. And so YAML is not a markup language. And they have broken all the rules of English grammar to write that. But that's okay. And that's cool, actually, that you don't have to stick to the standard written English. And YAML ain't markup language is the official full form of YAML. This is similar to GNU, which is, you probably know that already. Not GNU plot, but just GNU. And so GNU is also a recursive word. The word is, GNU means, GNU is not Unix. That's what I think the definition is of the expanded form. Where is that? GNU is not Unix. Where is that written? I'm on the, not on the website. I'm on the GNU website. It should define it. It should define what GNU means. Okay, let's see, not, and there it is. And so, no. Well, I'll define it for you. So the way GNU is written is like this. GNU means GNU is not Unix. That's how the word is defined. And so is YAML. YAML is, ain't a markup language, ain't markup language. That's how they have the name. But bottom line is that it is a human-friendly data serialization standard. It is not a language. It is how you define something that you write, that you want to produce an outcome for. And I think that was very clumsy to say that. So what I will do is actually show you these things with an example, and you will understand and appreciate what YAML is. I would like to tell you about this YAML thing is more like Python. In that this YAML is very, very strict when it comes to indentation. Extremely strict. If you make one mistake with a space or a tab or any kind of indentation, you will not understand what's going on. It is really, really scary from that perspective. So when you write YAML, you have to pay careful attention to indentation. Very, very similar in Python. Python is also extremely sensitive to indentation. In fact, they don't even have such a thing called opening and closing parentheses or brackets, or no such thing in Python. Similarly, it relies purely on indentation, and so does YAML. So now I would like to do a quick comparison between these two tools that we have discussed already, Chef, and the one we will now do in this example. So first thing was, you require installation of Chef. No such thing required. When you use this Chef, you have cookbooks. In here, you have playbooks. They're structurally similar, conceptually also similar, but execution style is very, very different. It uses built-in SSH tools and built-in Python, which is already there on most Unix laptops, or Unix computers, I should say. Unix computers, Linux computers, they already have these things. And so it just works. You don't need separate installation. Cookbook, playbook. You have roles here. You have roles here. You have other things in the kitchen. You will have similar structure in a folder, and you don't have to call it kitchen. You can call it whatever you like. There is no such name convention here. You just use the folder called Ansible, and that is the example that I will now begin with is very, very similar to our first example. When we started using Chef, we began with a first run example. Chef first run. we'll do the same exercise, but instead using Ansible. And we will run Ansible the first time. We'll do that in our virtual machine. And we will run this thing in this exercise inside this virtual machine. Don't do this on a personal computer. Do not do this on any computer that is of importance to you, because it will mess it up. So just only in the workstation is where you need to run exactly there, no other place. And I don't know why it's not starting, but it should start. The workstation should start in a minute. And I will now point you to the exercise that I have in mind. So the exercise is already defined in one of the lessons here. I will go there right now and grab it for you. Should be in this segment called Ansible first run example. So there is this first run is right there. We'll open it up and we'll go to a link in Git repository where the exercise is stored, and I'll just go straight to that. And that is the location where the exercise is sitting. So I'll grab that location, give it to you in Slack chat. You can actually run this exercise simultaneously with me. It's fairly simple. Just make sure that you're running inside the virtual machine, not outside. And here I am in a virtual machine. Before you run this exercise, there are a couple of steps. Since we are using the same machine, it is not a just enough operating system. You want to make sure that there are no web servers running here, because you may have been running these things in a previous attempt. So I just want to make sure that I don't have any of these. Apparently, I have this Nginx running. So which means I need to remove that Nginx. So I can remove that apt remove Nginx. And then I will also uninstall any dependencies by running apt auto remove. So sudo apt auto remove and purge any dependencies I have. And then I will check whether I still have any web server running, because that's going to cause a conflict, right? So PS check for web servers, we have nothing. Okay, PS check for Apache, I think we have nothing. Okay, so clean state. Now we will clone that repository that we gave you a link in Slack chat. So here it is, Git, or rather go there first. So we go to that location, and in there you will find it right here. That clone link should be available, and we should just grab that link and bring it here. Git clone, and then that link. Now that will bring down a folder. The folder is called Ansible first run. We'll go visit that folder and then open an Atom editor and inspect what it contains. Atom is opening up right now. And here you will see what it contains. It's a ready-made, I call kitchen, but kitchen is not the word. I call it kitchen because it is very analogous to a chef kitchen. But this folder is given to us. There are some things that are not really relevant right now in this particular folder. So I would like to delete a couple of those guys. So for example, here, that needs to delete. So I'm deleting that one right now. A couple of things to reduce confusion. So because that is not strictly a necessary thing. So I'm cutting down some of the unneeded things to reduce any confusion that we might have as we begin to look at Ansible as a product. And so these things that I'm deleting right now is strictly not a part of the Ansible, I should say kitchen. So I'm deleting them. So here is a virtual host configuration, which is nice. The README file, this is not necessary. So delete that. This is an index.html. Okay. This is how to run exercise. And there is a host file. There is Apache YAML. There is a Ansible configuration. And there is an ignore file. And there is a Git repository. Okay, cool. So this is what we have. Now we will begin to understand what do we have in our kitchen. The most important file in this folder is that file. The most. Just like we had our previous example in Chef, there was a folder called .chef, and in that folder there was a file called knife RB. That file was important because it kept our credentials and other critical things inside that hidden folder. Similar to that, we have this ansible.cfg file. It is simply a configuration which defines what is where, like what is stored in what location. And so you can look at that. It defines two things. Actually, the only one important thing, which is line number 2. That's the only operative thing that this thing is defining right now. And it is telling us that the host that you will run this thing on, this playbook folder, you will run this thing on as a target, will be called, like in Chef, we call them nodes. In here, we call them hosts. So there is a name called hosts. That file, hosts file, is a file called hosts that keeps track of all the hosts that we will run this on. So that's this file right here. And so we'll split it down to look at that simultaneously. And the Ansible configuration at the bottom, and the host file in the top. So this is the file called hosts, which contains a bunch of things. We'll see that thing right now. But that is the target. That is the node in Chef language. These are the hosts. One of them is the local host, meaning this machine. You run Ansible right here on this machine. That's one target host. And that's our first step. So we can see some other examples here also. And in another example, I'm also defining a target machine called test. It has an IP address defined here. It has a username defined here. It requires a private key file defined here. And you need to change that to match what your private key file is, which I just changed. And then sometimes you're targeting a machine that does not have Python 2, but it is a Linux machine, which is a modern Linux machine. And newer machines in Linux do not necessarily come with Python 2, which is what Ansible expects. And so you have to tell Ansible that the machine I'm going to run with does not have Python 2, so you better use Python 3. Because the machines, you will know that most modern machines come with Python 3 installed and not 2. Although some operating system vendors like Debian will carry both. And that's okay. And that's actually nice to have because you have both. But Ubuntu will not give you Python 2. They will give you only Python 3. And that's a challenge. And so Ansible expects number 2 version. And so you have to tell Ansible that, hey, I'm using 3 like this. You say Ansible Python interpreter, please use the Python 3 interpreter if that's the case. And this is just an example line. We'll get to this line later. We'll first of all use the localhost host. By the way, all these things need to be in one line, and that's how it is structured. So if you shrink it, you'll see that the whole thing is one line. Line number 5, all in one line. I'm not using line number 5 this time right now. I'm just using it directly on the host called localhost, meaning this machine. And I'm going to comment this line so it doesn't operate at all. This IP address is an old IP address which doesn't belong to me right now. So I relinquished it. It was there probably for some other exercise some other time. So I will like to replace this later on. Not right now. And so I want to target this local machine with a cookbook-like structure, because that's what I want to accomplish. And I will now see the cookbook-like structure that we have in our mind. So I will open it up right now. Cookbooks are called playbooks in Ansible. So let's go look at one of the example cookbooks here. And here, I'm going to open it on the right side. And that's how a cookbook will look like. Sorry, this is called playbook. Cookbook and playbooks. And they're all basically your desire that you express, right? You're expressing what you want this thing to do, and you just write that down and it will do it for you. As simple as that. And so this is what I have written as a starting example. It accomplishes the goal the desire that we have. And my desire in this example is to be specific. I mean, to be absolutely specific is these set of lines all the way from number 1 down to 50. So about 50 lines. So let's go see these things in a careful manner. And I'll give you a nutshell understanding of what that thing does. In nutshell, if you look at these 50 lines that we have in our playbook that we are looking at, the ultimate desire is to convert the target host machine into an Apache server. So this is an Apache playbook, effectively. But let's go into detail as to what exactly it is doing for us. So this will convert this machine into an Apache server, and it will probably incorrectly say that, yay, Chef works. You see, Chef works. That's the result page you will see. But that is because of a previous exercise that we have done using Chef, that we modified the page index.html. I'll tell you what I mean by that by going to the command line and visiting this location. And there you have this file called HTML folder, and there is this file called index.html. And we look at that file and it says, welcome Cloud Genius. So that, yeah, that's what we will see now. So that's the page we'll see. It says, welcome Cloud Genius. And we'll quit and we'll come back and we'll go to the Ansible starter exercise and get ready to execute Ansible first time to operate directly on this machine itself, for which we are going to invoke a playbook. The playbook will look like this, and we have it already here. We want to understand it though. So now if you look at the playbook, compared to the files that we have, in the number of files that we have in a cookbook can be a fairly large number of things. On the contrast, if you look at an Ansible playbook, it is fairly simple. Only 50 lines, only one file can define the whole thing for us. So let's go into reading this one piece of puzzle that I had here. I want to read that. And so I want to make sure that I delete these files. And I think I already deleted that. And then I want to execute. This line is how you actually execute the Apache playbook. And there are lots of steps involved in the playbook. And since we are doing this for the first time, I would like to do is to execute these steps. Like there is this task list. So do this thing, and then do this thing, and do that thing. I want to do these things, but I want to do it one at a time. So step-by-step execution is what I intend to do. And so that is what this extra extension involves. So I want to run it step-by-step execution. So I can see and show it to you as to what this particular setup is doing. So now I'm going to execute this playbook, but before I execute, I'll just quickly walk you through. So the goal with this particular, the desired state is going to be convert the machine into an Apache host. That's the top level goal. But now let's go read what it contains. Is it will target a host or a number of hosts that are collectively known as Apache. And so if you look at our host file here, we have a folder descriptor called Apache. This is below this flag or this syntax of a square bracket, any number of machines, this machine, and then we have that machine. All of these machines will become a part of the Apache group because that's how we have classified with a square bracket. Now we don't have a this machine and a that machine quite yet. And this test machine is a comment. We commented that right now. So I will need to comment this machine and that machine also. So operatively, we have only one machine, which is the local host machine. And the way to connect to the local host machine is a direct connection. We don't require SSH because we are already there. So we can just run Ansible directly on the machine because we are there. We don't need to connect to it. And that's how the target host group called Apache is defined in our hosts file, which is what is referred to in the Ansible configuration as our host file. And that's what we have. So we will now read ahead. This become thing basically means ask for super user privileges because it requires installation, which means We will do some things like install apt-get install Apache or something like that. That requires super user escalation. So this become used to be sudo in previous versions of Ansible, but now it has become. And so we have to use the word become a super user to say yes to it. So it will actually become, or rather elevate its privileges to a higher order so it can execute installation steps. With that, we'll now move further and understand some variables that we declare. We are declaring variable port number 80 as the HTTP port and setting up a domain called example.com. Now, if you open up the browser and see, what do we see? When we go to example.com, what do you think you will see? If you visit example.com, like right here, example.com is a reserved domain. It is not available to the public. And it is assigned like this for everybody to just understand that this is an example domain. And that's what you see when you go to example.com. This is a standard by the Internet Task Force. And so it is illustrative use for documentation. That's the whole purpose of this. Now I will need to override that domain because I've chosen that name. So this domain needs to be manually overridden. I can do that override by sudo vi etc hosts and editing to allow me to basically designate this machine 127.0.0.1 as the machine known as example.com. So when I do this override, I'm basically saying example.com is actually this machine. And that's a manual override I just did. So now if I open up this website called example.com and I try to refresh, you will see unable to connect. Unable to connect because there is no such web server running on this machine right now. I have renamed, I pointed this example.com to the localhost 127.0.0.1 in etc host, like here. So therefore you see unable to connect. Now I will go back to this Ansible playbook and understand what we are really trying to accomplish is assigning a domain name as a example.com reference to the exercise. So this exercise, when we execute, it will actually create a new web server under that domain name. Let's go further. Further at the top level, you see that there are these tasks defined, a bunch of tasks between number 9 and number 47. And then we have a handler in line number 48 that defines a process to restart Apache. You need to restart Apache when you change some configuration. And that's what we will be doing, is to change Apache configuration as we create a virtual host. And then we need to let Apache restart. So you define a separate handler instead of restarting Apache every single time you need it. So you basically do all the configuration changes that you need to do for the Apache installation, and then let the handler handle the restart action by declaring the state. State is restarted. You don't describe how to do things, but you define what you need done, the outcome, the result. You're basically, in the handler, you're saying Apache service, this guy, the resulting state should be restarted. Meaning, how you restart, I don't know, I don't care, you figure out, you should do it. And so it is actually using a module called service. And I just introduced you a new word called module. So service is a module in Ansible. Let's go see what that means. So if you go look at Ansible and module, you will see there are about more than 300 or so modules already written for us. And here is the module index documentation. It is, by the way, one of the best written documentations I have ever seen for a open source project with beautiful illustrated examples. And this is like a comprehensive list of index of all the modules available. And this is not how I search. So what I do is I actually go right to Google and say Ansible module service. And I focus search just on that. So I get straight to the point here. And this is the module that I'm really talking about right now, is to manage services. Now here, you will see that what we are doing here is managing the service called Apache and using the service module. What we are really doing is ensuring that the Apache state is restarted. And when I accomplish that, what is going to happen is that it will manage the service for us. And you can see some examples of how to use it. And so here you can say service name HTTPD, state is started, name HTTPD, state is stopped and restarted and reloaded and yes and something. So you're basically declaring what outcome you want and letting Apache module service decide how to do it. And that's the declarative way of handling in playbooks. Similarly, apart from this handler, we have a bunch of tasks in between line number 9 and 47. So let's go expand that now. So expanding it. And there are lots of tasks. The tasks are indented. You look carefully at the indentation, be very particular. See that there is exactly 2 indentations in between the beginning point and the become word, and there are exactly 2 indentations. Now here there are 4. Here also there are 4 indentations. Then we have 2. Then we have 2 here. And there are 4 here. And there are 6 here. It has to be very, very particular in indentations. If you are not particular, it will not run. Same thing with tasks. We have more indentation. Step 4, 4 out. This is 6 out, like that. So this is a block called name. Is another block called name, another block, another block. And these are indented blocks of different tasks defined. For us, there are exactly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 named tasks in this particular playbook. So it's from a structural perspective, written in a fashion that will help us understand what we're really trying to do. So what we know at the very bottom, we will restart the Apache service. That's okay. But what about the first step? First step is to install packages. The second step, basically the packages means we'll get all the packages that we need to install on the machine. So how are we installing? We are using an apt module. Apt is a module available in Ansible. You go here and search for Ansible module and say apt, and you go land on this right page exactly. And there you will find the apt module in Ansible, which will tell you what it does. So it reads, manages apt packages. Awesome. You go straight to the examples. And you can see how it runs. You can see that the apt package installs some version of package 1. Some version 1 of package foo. So package foo version 1, and it declares that I would like the state of that package to be present. And when I say state, I mean state of the union, a state of the package, present. Which package? Version 1. Foo version 1. And that's what you write in an apt service module apt module invocation. Another example, let's go see. Here, apt name asterisk, state latest. What does this do? It will upgrade all the packages to the latest version, simply. So you don't have to go and fetch. It will automatically go detect all the packages and update all of them to the latest available versions. So you can just very quickly update the packages just like by by this invocation of a task. And then you have updated all the packages simply. There are more. There are tons of examples you can see, but I will focus, on the documentation is the best way to read Ansible. Just focus search on a particular module, and you will find that these are beautifully written examples. And I think that is the authoritative source of reading about Ansible with well-documented examples. That's the part I love about it. Now back here, apt. I need to define what I want installed. So I'm giving it a name. And in the name segment, I am defining the names with this structure. And I have multiple names. And I am saying name equals item. And then with items, which items? These items. Which one? This one. And I may want another package called that one. And that one too, like that. So I can name my packages pretty much like this in a list called with items. And the list is written like this. So Apache 2, Git, this one, that one too. So I need to have these packages installed in the latest versions and make sure that to update apt cache before you install. So there is an apt get update step followed by apt install latest version step for all these packages. I will like to focus just on the first two packages because these are fictitious packages. So I'm getting rid of these lines. I just wrote them for making a point, but they are not real packages. So I'm deleting them. And what this thing will do for us is install these two packages, Apache 2 and Git. That's what I mean to say when I say install packages with these items. Make sure that the latest versions are installed. And before you begin installation, update the apt cache. That's the action expected from this module. And that is the first task. We'll minimize this first task. Let me just get rid of any deletes by accident. I may have made a mistake, so I'm getting rid of that. There we go. So I'm closing it. I'll shrink this name, install packages, and open the next one. The next one, now that we have Apache installed, I want to make sure that the service is started. So I'm using the service module again, just like the first one, or rather the bottom one here, service module. Another one, service module, Apache state is started as opposed to restarted. The difference in usage, I'm starting the service here. And then that's this task, simple task, one task. Let's go shrink it and expand the next one. Here we have enable mod rewrite. This is a similar reference that you may remember from the chef exercise. We had to use a separate recipe for mod rewrite to allow Apache to enable that module for rewriting. And we can do this by a module called Apache 2 module. And there is a module already available. And so we'll go and see that module. It is called Apache rewrite. So we'll go Apache 2 Apache 2 module. And here it comes up in the documentation. And there is a module name called Apache 2 module, which is what I'm using. And what I'm doing is using that module to make sure the state of that module is present. And that's what we are going to see in the examples here. We are saying Apache module state present, and you can define the name of the module you want. And here is a WSGI module. You can use a rewrite module. That's the module we need, Apache rewrite module. And so that action, Apache 2 module, will actually make sure that the rewrite module is present in the system. When you basically, as a consequence of this action, it will install the Apache rewrite module. And now, since you added a module, you need to restart Apache. So you are notifying the handler, this handler at the bottom, to restart Apache. And you're not restarting Apache in every single named action or named task, but you're handling all these notifications collectively at the end. You will let Apache restart one time. That's what we will be doing, is to notify the restart handler and move on with the next task. So we'll shrink this. Apache 2, listen on port definition. So what that action is, let's go see. And here is a very, very interesting module. And you will probably enjoy it when you see this. This module, I think one of the best ones in Ansible is line in file. Line in file. So let's go see what it does. It is actually brilliant in the way it is written. In that, if you look at Ansible module line in file and read the doc page for that, let's go see what it does. Here, Ansible line in file is a module that does what? It manages lines in text files. Okay, what does that do? Examples. Example is like this. When you have a line, let's say sc host in that file, you want to make a line change something, like make a line something different. So maybe a better example. A better example will be, yeah, there it is. So if you want to enforce SE Linux, you need to modify this particular file configuration for SE Linux and look for a item that a line that begins with the word SE Linux equal sign, and then replace that with line saying SE Linux equals enforcing. You're basically doing that change. You're looking at a file, this file, and looking at a line inside that file containing the word SE Linux equal sign at the beginning of the file, beginning of the line. And this arrow is a regular expression way of describing that the line needs to begin with this exact phrase. If you're familiar with the idea of a regex or regular expression, this is the concept that we are using inside the idea of a module of line in file. And what we are really doing is replacing whatever that line is with this line. So that's what line in file does. It looks at any configuration file in any system, any Linux system that you have in your control using Ansible, and edits lines on remote machines, edits configuration. It's very useful, very powerful tool available at our disposal, which will basically edit lines for us. And it'll keep track of what was there before, exactly do a pattern matching and substitute a line in a file. And that's what we want to do. What we want to do is we want to modify that file. We look for a regular expression that begins with the word listen with a space after that, and then replace it with a line that begins with listen followed by space followed by evaluation of an expression. The expression is HTTP port, which is defined right here. That is number 80. So what we are really doing is listen space 80. And that is what I want to make sure that such a line that says listen 80, 80, listen 80, listen space 80, such a line is present in this ports configuration for Apache. That's what I want to ensure, that Apache is actually listening on that port, and make sure that such a line is present in that file. And then when I change the configuration, I need to restart Apache. So I notify my handler to restart Apache. That's the idea. So now let's go shrink it and look at the next one. Apache set a virtual host on this port called 80. This is number 80. So that's what I want to ensure, that I'm creating a new virtual host port for the example.com domain. And so that's what I'm trying to accomplish. So now if you look at this example, it also uses line in file structure, or rather module. Line in file module will do what I want, which is, let's go see what it does. It does, the destination target file is etc apache 2 sites available 000-default.configuration. That's the file configuration you need to modify to indicate a virtual host that you want. So you go and look for a regular expression inside that file that begins with the letter greater than virtual host space followed by slash. Slash is a regular expression string. It's an escape symbol, so you have to make sure that you understand that this is regex. So it has a special treatment of slash will escape that asterisk, and then put a colon after that. And that's how you carefully understand regular expressions and then use them in your regex field inside line in file. I hope you understand or at least have heard of regular expressions because they are very, very regularly irregular. That was a bad joke. But just checking if you know what this regex is. If not, I will tell you a little bit more about that. If you know what a regex is, if you heard of it in probably some long time ago in college, maybe we can move on. But if it's not super complex, you can always refer to Ansible documentation. They will give you tons of examples of how do you construct a particular regex for the cases of most dominant usage. So just quickly tell me if you know what regex is or if it's like first time hearing it.
I know it.
Good. So I'm assuming that rest of you know. If you do not know, please ping me and I'll give you more on what regex is and how do we make use of that. So a regular expression is basically, think of it as a pattern matching structure that matches a particular pattern inside a particular location. In this case, this file. So we want to match that pattern called virtual host in that file and replace it with something that we want. What do we want? We want to say, you know what, virtual host, you use the port number 80, please. That's what we want. Line number 6. So I have a question for you. When I move my mouse, like on line number 6 without touching the screen, do you see it? Do you see my mouse moving at line number 6? Okay,
yes.
Good. Okay. When I have one more question, which is undo. The question is when I write on the notepad and I'm saying, playbook, do you see my mouse at playbook?
Yes.
Okay, so I don't need to write like this and indicate that. That is not necessary, I guess. I have this habit of scratching it too much times to make sure to draw attention. I think that is unnecessary, I guess.
Okay. It make it more obvious though.
Okay, so yeah, but it looks ugly at the end of the day, right? I draw like this and it makes it really ugly. But I guess that is useful. So I will keep doing it. So you tell me, what do I do? Okay, fine. Moving on. So back here. In this virtual host, what I want to say is port number 80. That's what I want to indicate inside this default configuration for sites available in the Apache configuration. And I want to make that change in the line in file, this change with a regular expression as called out. And so once I do that, I need to again notify Apache to restart. So it will restart through the handler at the end of the run, end of this run. And now we have to create a virtual host file also. So I'll shrink this one and create a virtual host file right now. Now, this is another module. The next module we want to use is a template module. And a template module, let's see what it does. Ansible module template. And documentation. And here it is. And see what it does. And template does what? It templates a file out to a remote server. It doesn't need to be remote. We are directly on the machine, so it will do it locally. But it will do remote also. Dominant use case is remote. We are just beginning to run Ansible first time, so we are doing it locally. And templates a file to a remote location. So you give it a template structure, it will create the target machine will get a file created. Let's go look at some examples. An example is if I want to create a file called etcfile.conf in the target machine. And I want to assign the ownership, group structure, and permission structure to that file. But I want to provide it a template. Like, okay, use this as a guiding principle, as a template to drop that file in the destination. And I provide my source template right there in a folder called whatever you like, my templates, and whatever file name you have. The template format is called J2, which stands for Jinja templates. It's the Python way of creating templates, Jinja 2. And That's the Jinja documentation you can read. And this is a templating language, and you basically define a structure of how you want to structure a file. It's very useful for configuration templating. You define what you want to be created in the destination, and you give it a template, and it will create the target file. That's what we are doing here. We are giving it a source. The source is this file here, virtualhost.configuration. I am going to pull it on the right side, and you can see the source. The source is a template. This is virtualhost.conf template, which is basically the virtual host I need. And I'm going to substitute the word domain in multiple locations, like this, in multiple places. You see 4 places. I'm replacing the name domain with this value that I have in my variable. And similarly, the expression HTTP port, I'm replacing it in exact one place with the value of 8080. That's what a template will be used to basically replace this value expression with number 80 and this domain reference with the example chosen, which is example.com. And so that's the structure I will be using as a template source and dropping it in the destination called etc apache 2 sites available domain.conf. So I'm basically creating an example.conf configuration in the target machine using the source virtual host configuration that I have locally sitting right here. And that is what my Apache YAML configuration for creating a virtual host file will do for me. It is using a template module. I will now shrink this and go to the next one. In the next one, what I'm doing is I need to enable the newly created virtual host. So I'm saying A2N site. Now this does not have a ready-made module available to enable a newly created virtual host. So we don't have a ready-made Ansible way of doing this. So we use a generic way of doing this by using the command module. Now command is another module which is basically general purpose execution of commands in Ansible. So you have Ansible module command, and you can execute any command you feel like. And so let's go see that command module documentation. And command module does what? Command module executes a command on the remote machine. Now it doesn't have to be remote, but just saying, executes a command. So you want to execute a command, it will do this. Now what command do I want to execute? I want to execute the command to this related to this virtual host file that I have. This particular virtual host, I want to enable the site. So there is a command in Apache source Apache package called A2N site. It will enable the newly created virtual host. I made it available. I need to now make it enable. So what I'm really doing is creating a symbolic link to the sites enabled folder location with the sites available folder location. That's what actually does under the hood when you enable a site using a virtual host configuration that you create in the previous step. So I'm running and executing a command called A2N site followed by example.com. And then that particular virtual host will be enabled. And once I enable a new virtual host, I need to again notify Apache to restart. So I will do that through the handler that I have. And now the last one. The last one is clone a basic HTML template. I have some already written example HTML that I have stored in a repository, and that I want to use with the website that I'm creating right now. So what I'm doing is using Git as a Ansible module. So Ansible module Git is where you will see what Ansible module Git does is it deploys software from Git checkouts. That's exactly what I want to do here. I have this software here that I want to use, and I want to deploy it in the destination. The destination is the example host configuration. which is var www and then example.com. That location needs to be updated with the Git repository where I have written down and stored the code for an example website. So this Git module will basically clone the entire repository and drop it in the right location, which happens to be var www example.com. And then I chose to not update it. So that's fine. You can choose yes. So it will update Git repository if you already have it there. Having said, that's the last action that we want to run. And there is no need to restart Apache. So we are not invoking the notification at the end of this action, the Git action. So now we have understood what this particular playbook does. What I want to do now is to run it. Running it involves this line number 3. Ansible playbook, Apache YAML, ask become, meaning ask to become the root user, and run this playbook step by step. That step by step is a necessary thing only for demonstration purposes. When you're telling somebody about how Ansible is executing, that's when you invoke this, but this is otherwise not necessary. But I'm going to show it to you, so I will take it and I will run it right here and say, run this and ask me for my super user password, and then run the playbook step by step. So I will run it. And it says, okay, give me the password. So I give it the password, is Cloud Genius. And then it says, okay, I'm going to do the first task. What is the first task? We'll go look at the Apache host, Apache YAML. The first task is to install package. So 2 packages. So I will say, let me just adjust this a little bit. So I will say, yeah, go ahead and please do the task number 1 called Apache. That's the task here. In the play Apache, the task is gathering facts. That's the first task, which is not line number 11, by the way, not line 11. The first task is to just understand what you are doing, on which machine you're doing. So just gathering facts about what operating system you have and what's going on, what are the environment variables. It just gathers those facts about the configuration of the system where you're running it on. And that is what is the first action in this playbook called Apache YAML. It is not called out, but it is implied by default. Every Ansible action begins with gathering facts, unless you actually disable gathering facts, in which case you can say something like gather facts no. You have to say gather facts. I will need to say no or something like that. You have to say explicitly say don't gather facts. Then it will not gather facts. But right now I want to gather, let it do what the default behavior is. So I will cut it and then let it run. So I'll say, yes, please gather the facts. I'll say yes. And so it is gathering facts and it done. It did the gathering part. Next one is to install packages. Do I want to allow it to install packages, Apache and Git? Oh, yes, I do want to allow. So it say yes. So it is now going to install these 2 packages for us. They are Git and Apache. Git is already installed, so it will skip it probably, or attempt to install and do nothing with it. And package Apache 2 will be installed right now. And you will see the success in green color, just like this green color. You will see another green color item saying install packages succeeded or something like that, or just showing green color, okay. That action will, actually it's not green. It is not green because it changed. It did some state change in the machine. It actually modified and installed Apache. Therefore, it is yellow color. So a green color means no change. A yellow color means change. It changed. This item was installed. This item already existed. So the whole line is yellow because this particular task of installing packages made a change to the system. That's why it's called changed and yellow color. There is also a red color, which is the error color. So this perform next task is to enable Apache. By the way, by now we have the machine installed Apache. You can see it, or rather we'll proceed through this and later on see it. The next action is to enable Apache. The question that is asking us is, should I enable Apache? Line number 17. Let me adjust this a little bit more. So line number 17. Come on, go side by side, please. There we go. And here is line number 17. Should I enable Apache? And I'll say yes, please. So it will enable Apache. And it says green color OK, meaning it was already enabled because the install action enables Apache by itself. And so you don't have a change there. It was already enabled. Next action is to enable module called rewrite. And that is this action, line number 20. So we'll say yes to it. So it enables that module, enable mod rewrite. And it changed the state of the machine a little bit because it added the mod rewrite module in Apache. Now it needs to restart Apache because you just added a module. But it is not going to restart Apache right away. Instead, it will notify the handler to restart Apache at the end of the run. So it has taken note of the fact that there is a restart notified, like line 23 does, because you enabled a new module. And now line 23 here is notifying Apache restart handler to restart. Line 49, so that is taken a note of, but it proceeds ahead with the next task. The next task is to look at the listen port. So we'll go look at that destination file, which is this particular file. Let's go see that file right now before we say yes to it. And I want to see what it has currently. And then you will see what the result of that action is going to be. And so let's go see. I think this HTTP listen space 80 is what we expect to see at the end of the run. So I will open up another terminal and go to that location to find out what it actually has in that file. And so we'll open that file, copy this, and go to the file in a editor, in a separate editor. We'll say VI, or rather sudo VI, because it's a super user file location, and modify the file, or rather inspect the file first. And we see that it has the listen 80 already. Okay. Now this task has not run yet. So I will, just for fun, modify it just to prove you that it is actually doing its stuff. Just for the kicks, what I'm going to do is make it listen on, say, port number 90 for no reason, just for fun. Deliberately making it different to prove it to you that it is going to fix it. So saving it right now. If you now look at that file again, it is still 90. See that? 90. Now I will go here, or rather I'll exit that file. And then this guy needs to receive a yes from me. So it will go and modify the Apache listen port number 80. And when I say yes, it should go and modify. And it tells me changed, meaning it actually goes and changes this file with the port number 90, changes to port number 80 right there. It modified that. And it tells me right here, changed, which is exactly what you saw, a live example of line in file module in action. Quit. It modified that, I deliberately made it different, 90, and it corrected it to be 80. 80 is the standard, it is the default value. We chose this method of ensuring that the default is correct. With that, we'll move forward to the next one, which is to task Apache virtual host. Let's go see what that task is. The task after the port number 80 action is the Apache virtual host on port action. So that action is, we're done with this action. We are going to do the line number 30 action right now. And in that, what we are doing is creating a virtual host expression like this. That's like this line in file expression. So we should expect to see line in file, virtual host with a space followed by star, colon, 80, and a closing angle bracket. Beginning angle bracket. That's what we expect to see in that particular file. Which file? This file. So let's go before we run it. I want to see what that file currently contains. So I will go to a different editor in Atom, or maybe not Atom, but VI, and say sudo VI, and examine what we have in that particular file called, what's it called? Sites available 000 default.configuration. Okay, open it up. What do you got here? So the file looks like a large file, lots of lines, 31 lines apparently. And so we'll see what it needs to do. It needs to go and set this particular regular expression, begin with an angle bracket virtual host, followed by asterisk, followed by colon. That's the look it'll look for. And then modify the expression to be angle bracket virtual host asterisk colon 80 angle bracket. So if you look at that file here, you see that the very first line is matching. Virtual host colon virtual host space asterisk colon. That was the expression that we were looking for in the regular expression. So it matched that, followed by the number 80. It's already 80 there, which is the default value. But I want to have another fun, and I'll deliberately make it something different, like the previous example. I'll make it 81, just for fun. 82, yeah, whatever. So I made it 82. So that is 82 now. Let's see if, sorry, I think I made a mistake in typing, so I need to exit from that file. I'll come out of that, make a no change, and then go back in, and then make it 82 very carefully. And so replace it with 82. There we go. Now what I want to do is search for another such pattern of virtual host, any other location in the file. And I see that the end, there is a different expression with angle bracket and then slash virtual host. So it is different from the regular expression. The regular expression will not catch it because the beginning slash virtual host does not match the regular expression. Only the first line does. And so this 82 will become 80 at the end of this particular task. And now I will save this. You will see that it is still 82 here. And now exit. And now go back here and allow this particular Apache virtual host on port number 80 to actually make it port 80 and not leave it like 82. So I'll say yes to it. I'll say yes. And it will go and fix it. It will make it 80. So it changed. Now you can go back here and examine, and you will see it is 80. That is what line in file again doing for you. That is the reason why I like this line in file module very much, and I use it quite a bit whenever I can. That action, what it did was to modify the virtual host port number in the appropriate sites available file. And we will shrink this action now and move on to the next one. The next action involves creation of a new file. This file doesn't exist. This file doesn't exist in the sites available folder. So if you go look at that folder right now, there are these files. Only the default configuration for SSL and the 000 default configuration for regular HTTP access. Those two files exist, and we have no other folder file, nothing else. So in that folder, I need to create a new virtual host configuration, just like the 000 default configuration for a new website called example.com. And so I need to have that file created just like this, but another one called example.conf, example.com.conf. And that is what I intend to do using the template I have already in my system. And it will create a destination file by the name domain.conf, meaning example.com.conf. That's what you will see now, a new file getting created in this folder when I say yes to this guy. So I will say yes, and you will see that it creates a file changed again in the local host. Now you see here, there is a new file available to us. The file is called example.com.conf. This is new virtual host file created. If you examine it, it basically is the same templated structure that we had for ourselves. If you look at the template itself, it will match it with evaluated expressions. For domain evaluated as example.conf, and HTTP port evaluated as line number 80, example.conf, 4 places. This is how you will construct a templated configuration in a virtual host setup. You can use this. These are general purpose principles you can apply to any configuration for any software. This is not specific for Apache. It's a general purpose file handling tool called line in file. It'll basically modify any line in any file using a regular expression for you in a target machine or hundreds of thousands of target machines in one command. You want to modify Apache configuration in your 1,000 machines, boom, it'll do it. It'll maintain it. Somebody goes mucks around and messes up, it'll fix it. That's how you use it in real life. And I'll give you the actual examples of how people have used it in real life also. Let's just finish this first. So here, I will quit from that example configuration that was created. And I will go back to our Apache YAML, where we are looking at our playbook, where we have done this step for 35. That is done. So we'll now move on to 38. And what we are doing right now, 38, what it does is enables the site. Okay, let me tell you exactly what enable means. So if you see this folder called etc Apache 2 and then sites available, that folder contains these files. Then you take a step back and look at what we have, and you will find that there is a folder called sites available. That's where we were. So these are all the available sites for Apache to show. And here is the folder of all the sites that are enabled for Apache to show. Just because you have a site available doesn't mean Apache will actually show it to you unless you enable it. So this sites enabled folder is a separate folder which keeps track of all the sites that are enabled. By default, only the default site is a soft link back to the available site default. However, I want to make sure that this newly constructed example.com site is also enabled. So we need to have a soft link from this location, from this sites enabled folder, back to a new file that we created here, which is this file. In the sites available, the available folder, available site configuration exists, but it is not enabled yet. I want to enable it. So I can run a2n mod example.com and it will enable by creating a soft link like this. So this is a link. You can see the L letter here, L, that shows you a link. This arrow shows that it's a link. And so it's a soft it's called a symlink, symbolic link in Unix. So this is a symbolic link to / sites available. That's what you will see for example.conf, just the next step, which is what we are doing through a command module, a2n site, running the command to create etc Apache 2 sites enabled example.conf example.com.conf is the new enabled site based on the available site, sites available example.com.conf, and that's the action which is waiting to happen, a2n site. And I will say yes, and I'll say enter, and I will see that it changed something. And let's go see what it changes. We'll go and examine and look at list, and you will see that a new soft link is showing up. Example.conf is a soft link pointing to / sites available example.conf, which is this file that we created in a previous step, which is this file sitting in that folder. And that is basically is the root where this thing points to. So this is a soft link to the actual available site. This is in the enabled folder. So in our enabled files, we have these, and in our available files, we have the same, but the real files actually sit in the, okay, hold on, where are we? Our sites available. And in the available folder, we have these folders, these configuration files. For example, the default configuration for SSL, the default configuration for HTTP, These are the corresponding symbolic links in the enabled section, and the actual available configuration files are in the available section. So example.conf is the available that we created April 28th, meaning today, just now. This is universal time in London time zone. The machines in Unix and Linux always operate in London time, or rather UTC time, but you can always override. I decided to leave it at London time, so it's UTC time zone. So you can see that the date is showing as UTC. So with that, what I want to do next is the last action we have, which is to clone a template, an HTML template that I have already created. So this 38 can minimize, and I'll focus on 45 now. And that's the action expected. The next action is to clone a basic HTML template. Now let us see what the template is, or rather we'll see the result. It's much more interesting that way, as opposed to looking at HTML code. So cloning an HTML template will bring down a site, ready-made site, dump it here, and it should show us in the example.com location. So I'll say yes to it. And you will currently see that the dumping will happen in this location, var www followed by example.conf. Oh, sorry, example.com. Right here in the command line, you will see that we have nothing there. So we'll go here, cd var www, and what do we see? We see just HTML. Do you see any example.com? Not yet. You will soon see it. In the same folder, we will see the destination folder will contain the code that we want to clone as a templated example website into that folder right next to this folder, which is going to be var www, and a new folder called example.com that will show up right here in just a minute after we go say yes to this. So we'll say yes, it will go and clone it, drop it in the basic HTML template into that location. We should see it now. Go list, and we see it, and we see example.com as a folder containing a bunch of things inside, which is what our site will actually show. The code for the website will be right there. And so what I would like to now do is, oh, it finished. So by the way, before it finished, it started the handler. It restarted Apache 2 because that's not a action that we had to say yes or no, but it was already requested ahead somewhere here, which requested multiple restarts. So it restarted, the handler restarted Apache 2 already. And as a consequence, we have made 8 changes and 10 actions that did not require 10 total actions. 8 of them changed. None of them was unreachable. None of them failed. It's a good sign. So we have a successful result. Now we're expecting to ping example.com, and it will ping the localhost machine because we have cat etc hosts file modified to include 127.0.0.1, the localhost address, as the name example.com. So now if I go back to my browser here, come on browser, hello, there we go, and reload. We have the example.com already typed in there. I'm just going to reload, and what do we see? We see example domain. This is strange. This is because of caching. So I don't expect to see this. So I'm going to remove that and close the browser and restart the browser with a clean cache. So I'm expecting to see my newly created site that Ansible created for us, not that example page that was cached. So opening up the browser again, I think in the incognito mode, I think it will clean out the cache. And so this caching can be overridden by using the private window. So just use a private window and say, go example.com, please. And it will show you the new site. And it shows you right there. It says, greetings, Cloud Genius. Looks like you successfully cloned this Git repository. And that's the logo. And that's what you see. So this is not example.com actual, but it is the one that we are running in our local machine. and that we ran through our Ansible configuration of a playbook that played for us these steps. Now, let's go look at the playbook again and examine what it did for us. So we'll expand it and then look at it one more time quickly. Okay, just that. There we go. And you shrink this. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These plays and a restart at the end was able to operate on this target host. The host that we had in our consideration was only one machine, which is this machine, local host, and we were able to make a local connection to that machine. Now, if you want to run this in the context of a cloud, it is fairly simple. You just don't run it locally, hide it, and remove these stupid entries called this machine and that machine. They're pointless. And so we have this machine called test, which doesn't exist yet. So I'll open it up, for example, and then go and create the machine, put its IP address right there, and everything else is good, as you know already. And I want to use that. So you can very easily run the same exact exercise in any machine in anywhere on the world which has internet connection. Any computer, any Linux computer, I should say. Even if it doesn't have Python 2. So we will deliberately choose a machine that does not come with Python 2. In the virtual works, in the CloudGenius workstation, it has Python 2 also. But some machines don't give you Python 2. So what happens in that case is that it will tell Ansible to just deal with it using Python 3. Ansible has now the capability to deal with Python 3 also. Earlier it did not. In those cases, you had to manually install Python 2 onto target machines, which was a hassle. The hassle has gone away. Now let's go see this exercise, same exact exercise in some cloud location. So we'll go to some cloud. We choose some cloud, like I think the easiest one is, you know it, DigitalOcean. It's the easiest one. It's the most simple. I think simplicity is the beauty here. Yeah, just log in, get a machine done. 55 seconds flat. It's too long, but whatever. So let's go log in. 55 seconds is too long for me. I prefer faster, but there we go. So getting a machine and running the same exact exercise takes like 2 minutes. So we create a new machine and say, give me a droplet, give it to me in, and yeah, Ubuntu is fine. We know Ubuntu does not come with Python 2, but who cares? And so Python 3, fine. 1 GB machine, San Francisco, and this key pair. And the machine is called whatever you like. I'm going to call it test and create. Now I get an IP address. I'll take that IP address from here and drop it into my Ansible configuration. And I am going to run the playbook. And so here is the machine starting up. In a few seconds, we should have the IP address given to us, and IP address is available. So I'm going to copy that, bring it to here, and put that in the location right there and say, here is the machine I want you to deal with. And use the root username and use my private key I have here. And make sure that you're dealing with Python 3 so you understand that piece. And now we'll look at this host file one more time and make sure that it doesn't have any unnecessary entries. For example, the local host line is already commented out. Nice. The test line is active and I want to close it now. The Apache playbook is good as is, no change expected. The example.com domain is something that I would like to not use. Instead, maybe you can use some other domain. And in that case, we have to go and change that domain DNS name on our domain control panel. So we can do it that way. What we can do is, put it instead of example.com, call it test.cloudgenie.us. And thereby, I need to create a new reference to that DNS name with the IP address that I have now from the cloud. So I will create that. What I will do is go back here and say in my Cloudflare, please create a new entry called test. And so I'm logging in, and I logged in, and then I go to my domain, look at DNS, and then find out the test entry. Is there such an entry? No, it doesn't exist. So I'll create a new entry and make it 2-minute TTL, put in the IP address from the DigitalOcean cloud has given me an IP address. So we'll copy that, put that in Cloudflare, put it right here, and then say add the record. The record now points test to this IP address. Awesome. What I will now do is ping it. So by the way, I have modified my Apache YAML. The domain name is now test.cloudgenie.us, which is beautiful. I will go check my command line and dig it, test.cloudgenie.us, to see if it is pointing to the correct machine, and it does, which is nice. I need to now run Ansible play. How do you run it? You can run it like line number 3 if you like. Or you can run it even simpler. Just run it like without the step action, and even without the become action, because become action is not necessary in the DigitalOcean cloud because it already gives you a root user. So even the become action is unnecessary. So these last 2 steps, not required. Just the Ansible playbook and the name of the playbook. That's all. So we'll go back here and say, you please run Ansible playbook called apache.yaml. And it knows where to go and run. It knows that it needs to go to the host entries, which is this machine. Actually, we can further expand it to say test. Again, this is not necessary, but I'm just being clear about it. Test.cloudgenie.us as the IP address, and root login and private key and Python 3 connection and all that. So it knows where to go and operate. We can now run the playbook. It will run it and be done with it. And we will see the site just like that. So I ran it. It will do all these things that we expected to do. It says, are you sure you want to connect to this machine? And I'll say yes. And it just goes and does its thing. And at the end, we will have a result, which matching what we had in our local machine, except this time it will be in the real cloud. And we will see these things happen. It is actually installing Git and installing Apache 2 and doing all the virtual host configurations. And at the end, we will have the site up and running. So let's wait for it. In 2 minutes, we should finish this action of installing on that site, the newly constructed DNS domain. And it is doing these things. You can see that the action is green colored, meaning Apache was already enabled. You can see that the mod rewrite was added, so it is yellow colored. You see that the port number 80 was already there to default, so it did not require a change, so it's green color. Virtual host was already port number 80, so it did not require a change, so it is green colored. Created a new virtual host file for test.cloudgenie.us, so that's a yellow color. It enabled the site, another yellow color. Cloned the basic HTML template, also yellow color. Restarted Apache, it was required to restart, so yellow color. And so 6 changes as opposed to 8 changes the last time. Last time we had 8 changes because I manually modified this to number 90 and manually modified this to number 80 for fun. So I had these 2 extra actions which were yellow, but this time they are green. So we have less actions change. Whereas in the previous step, you will remember and recall, it is 8 changed actions. And that's exactly what we have now, slightly different because I did not bother hacking, which was kind of an academic step to show you. And now we will open up the browser. Here, go to test.cloudgenie.us, and what do you see? You saw it. Fine. Let's kill the machine. Destroy. Or rather, before I kill, questions. No questions? Okay, let me ask you this question. Was it useful? Was it different? Was it interesting? Was it more efficient compared to Chef? No response. Are you there? Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
I know. I know. So I think this is a good time to take a short break. We will begin our further expansion of Ansible discussions. We saw this and we ran this exercise, and it is written down here. But yeah, I ran it for you. So forget that. Forget the write-ups. We'll take a short break now, and we'll resume further details. What we are really trying to accomplish is to understand how do we use this Ansible tooling to run a large-scale container infrastructure. That's what we are getting towards. So I just showed you I showed you an Apache example. I will expand the ideas towards creating Docker setup, large-scale Docker setup using Ansible. That's what I will be doing, and then we'll switch back to Docker. That's the plan. So let's begin a timer for 7 minutes and let it go. Hey guys, assuming you're back. Are you back?
Yeah.
Okay. So now let us do the next exercise using the same thing called Ansible. What I want to do now this time is to help us understand how do we use this tooling to make sure that our infrastructure is secure. And we will run this example on just one machine, but you can see expand it into any number of machines that you want to what I call harden. The idea is hardening, meaning security hardening. Harden. Make it difficult for people to hack into. Make it secure. Simply speaking, secure. Secure. That's what we want to make sure that we are making sure that our systems that we deploy out there wherever we are, wherever we have them, are hardened and secured. And so there are best practices already documented in Linux and Unix as to how do you go about hardening stuff. And so what I have in this example that we are going to deal with, which is in this page, is what I will be giving you a link for, is the second Ansible exercise today, which will basically do the hardening part of Debian Ubuntu servers using Ansible. So to inspect what this contains, I will go back to my virtual machine, go out of this folder, and clone the repository. So git clone this second example that we have. And that's coming up. It came. The folder is called Ansible example. So I will go inside it and then open up Atom editor to see it. Atom opens up in a few seconds. But Atom is little slow on the virtual machines. And that is the reason why I don't like it, but I think it is the best available choice. So I'm going with it, but I don't like it. It is slow. But that's what I have. So we don't have a better solution yet. Remove the project folder and close out this window from the previous exercise and stay focused on the new one, which is this example right there. Now here we have similar structure, except this time we are talking about hardening the machines that we will create in the cloud. So what is hardening and how do we define it? What are we really accomplishing? That's the core idea that I have expressed in the corresponding example in a playbook called user YAML. That's the playbook. And we will run through the playbook, and we'll, just like we did the previous example, we'll run through the playbook in this example also. But a couple of differences here is that the idea here is the Ansible configuration is the primary file that defines a lot of variables in our example, in this Ansible example. And so one of the first ones is to define where the hosts file is. And the host file happens to be a file called hosts. And so that file is this file here. That's what we'll look at next. And then there are a couple of other things like host key checking false. So you don't have to say yes or no at the time of first connection. So you can basically suppress that. But suppressing that is not a good idea for production usage. So you should actually say host key checking true for production. But for right now, I have it as false. Just making sure that you understand that piece. Deprecation warnings, I have disabled them because sometimes Ansible changes a bit. Ansible is changing quite a bit in the last few months. It is evolving. Newer versions are coming up. Certain aspects are getting deprecated. Others are, new features coming all along. So certain features you will see the deprecation warnings pop up. And I want to suppress them for our purposes. So that's why we have it false. But again, these are cosmetic things. You can just delete them. That's not necessary. The most important thing here is which hosts that we are dealing with. And that is the file containing all my hosts is this file called hosts, which is this file. Now here we have a different way of describing all our hosts, all of them. One of the machines that we will have is going to be the machine called Ansible example. That's the name of the machine. In here, it has an IP address. The username of the login user. In our example, it is going to be root. We can change it. But to begin with, you will probably get a root user unless the cloud provider gives you a different user, in which case you will use that user. And so it can be something like different, Ubuntu, for example. Amazon Cloud will give you this name. Azure Cloud will let you choose your name. So you have a choice there as to what is going to be available. But let's begin with the root example. We have a corresponding private key that you want to use for the root user, and Ansible Python interpreter, the selection choice like before. But the example before and this example is slightly differently structured. What I have done here is put this host file in a YAML format, meaning indentation is super duper important. Don't mess with indentation in YAML. 6 spaces, 4 spaces, and 2 spaces. It is critical to remember that you're not messing up with indentation. Once you have that, you're ready. You're ready to look at this host. By the way, this is a more elegant way to write host definition. You can, put a bunch of addresses that you have in your command and, put a large collection of machines that you carry and you want to manage using this Ansible configuration. You can put this example to use, this particular host file example. And then we'll run the playbook. The playbook is this play. That's the play. That's the only file we have which is kind of operative. There's a README file, and you can see it, but I'll just run it for you. So you can read the README later. Now, user example, this user YAML, what it does. Let's go see. And what we really want to do with the target machine that we have is, first thing, not use the root user, right? The reason we don't want to use the root user when we get a machine is because it is considered a bad practice. When you go to a cloud, they just give you a machine like the one you want, like create a droplet. The machine you typically get in most of the clouds, except certain clouds, is a machine with a root login. And that's what we are going to get. But it's generally considered a bad idea to let root access be open in a machine that is away from you. So basically, the principle of least privilege. So the idea is least privilege. This principle of least privilege is basically when you are accessing some resource of some sorts, and the user is accessing that resource, you want to grant this user the least amount of privilege to accomplish a job or a task, whatever the task is, whatever the user is doing. Give him or her the lowest permission possible that will let them complete the task. That's the kind of permission is considered a good practice. Now, when you are giving them root permissions, it is not the least privilege, but the highest privilege that you can give. And that is why it is not a good practice, because you're violating the principle of least privilege. In Windows land, you may know this in a different fashion. In Windows land, I think it's called, what's it called? It's called run as administrator. You may remember this administrator. In Windows, sometimes you have to do certain things when you right click and say run as admin, and then you say password. You remember that? Do you? And then it runs. Have you done such a thing?
Yeah.
Okay. So this idea is the same idea here, is to allow the user to run not like an admin user, but when you want to run certain things, you go run that thing as a administrator. Like in Linux, you will do the same thing with sudo. You say sudo and then do it, as opposed to just do it. And so there is a XKCD comic about sandwich that you may or may not have seen this, but you should see this. It says, this person says, make me a sandwich. So the other person says, what? Make it yourself. Then the person says, sudo, make me a sandwich. And then the other person says, okay. Now that was a joke. Do you understand the joke? Do you get the idea? Do you get the idea how it relates to what we are talking about? Run as administrator. And so when you run as admin, you're basically saying sudo, or you're escalating the privileges. Usually you run like a low privilege user, low privilege all the time. But when you want to do certain things of higher order, you elevate your privilege. And this elevation is possible provided you have credentials. And if you don't have the credentials, you cannot elevate yourself, and therefore you cannot accomplish the higher order task. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying, but if you don't, please ask me, because this is crucial to understanding the next exercise, which is this idea of principle of least privilege. So please tell me that you know this, or I will go deeper to help you understand.
I think we got it.
I think you got it. Okay, good. So this joke, you know the joke already. So I'm going to run with this machine, and it's going to get me a super user privilege, which is a higher order privilege, and I don't want that. I want to reduce my own privileges. I will keep my credentials, but not actively use the root login for every single action. And that is the problem with these clouds, is that they give you root access directly, which is, I guess, a good thing because of simplicity, but it's not a good thing from a security standpoint. So we will fix that using Ansible. We have this Ubuntu machine, we get a droplet, and we'll look at a location, and we'll select our key pair, and we say this machine should be called whatever you like. So I'll just go with the default name, create the machine. Machine is starting up. We'll grab the IP address and put that in our file here. Which file? There's a host file for that. So you define it in the host file and put the IP address right in that location. I'll put it right there in just a minute. As soon as the IP address becomes available. And there we have it. So copy it and paste it, save it, close it. User. That's this playbook will play the scenario that I'm going to describe to you right now here. Is what I'm really doing is making sure that our root login is disabled. But before I disable root login, I need to create a new user. Create a low privilege user. And then log in as that user. Let's call this user Cloud Genius. That's the login name that I will use. So I'll create a new user called Cloud Genius on the machine, and then log in as that user, and then disable root user. And I'll disable a bunch of other things, like, don't even allow password access. So the machine that you create here in DigitalOcean, or sometimes some other clouds, they will give you a password in email. Another bad idea. Give the password in email if you don't select a key pair. If you don't select this IDR as a key pair, like not, then they will email you a password. That's again for simplicity reasons, but again, not a secure idea. You don't want to use passwords because passwords are, manually typed. It's not repeatable, not automatic. And so you want to make sure that they are automated. So you use a key pair situation, key pair scenario. And so you want to disable password access. And you want to disable complete root access and disable a bunch of other feature sets in Linux so that it becomes closer to the principle of least privilege. And this is a fairly elaborate subject. We will cover only a portion of this in our example. So just a subset portion, just to give you an illustration of what can be accomplished. So back here, what I want to do is, first of all, get ready to create a user. The username will be Cloud Genius. That's my intention. So I want to add a user called Cloud Genius right there. And I will use a user module in Ansible. The user module in Ansible does what? Creates a user. That's as simple as that. And so there is this apt module which will install sudo as a package. So that's a necessary step in certain machines that do not have sudo package already loaded. Like Debian will not give you sudo to begin with. So if you want this to run on Debian machine, then you need to have this segment or this task, because it will then install sudo package, which is not there by default in Debian operating systems. So that's why you have this action, which is not strictly necessary for an Ubuntu machine, because Ubuntu already has the sudo action or sudo package installed and present. So we don't have to worry about this piece of action currently, because we have chosen a Ubuntu machine. Next action is to add a user. The user will be called Cloud Genius. The name is Cloud Genius, and it is expected to have a password. So you provide a password, but you don't provide the password in clear text. So what do? You encrypt it. And the encrypted value is called Cloud Genius _ password in that expression. That expression is evaluated like this with a variable reference. And this variable stores the encrypted value of the password. But then how do you generate this encrypted password? You use an open source library called OpenSSL to generate a password. So if you have a password of something like ABC in mind, you will generate the encrypted password using OpenSSL. And say my password is ABC. And that should generate encrypted, or rather shadow password, I should say. Shadow OpenSSL. I did not type it properly. It's OpenSSL. And it generates the shadow for us. So you can use the shadow right there. This shadow is the shadow password for the actual password. Now you can choose whatever you like. It's your choice. In this example, I have chosen 123. This 123 is what I used to create the shadow here that I have placed in that location. And that's the shadow for the actual password 123. On this expression gets evaluated with its shadow value. And that is what will be assigned in the user creation step using the user module in Ansible. And in that user that I'm creating called Cloud Genius, I'm also going to assign not only a password, but assigning a shell to the user. So when the user logs in, he or she will be assigned a bash shell. I want to assign that user in the group called root. And append equals yes means add that user to the list of users. And that the action that we will create in this particular step. Next step is to add that user called Cloud Genius to people who can super user escalate. So I'm giving them the permission to escalate as needed and go higher order, like elevate. And this idea, the ability to do that, is maintained in a list of sudoers. If your login name is a list of sudoers, then you are authorized to elevate your privileges and run higher order commands. Otherwise, it fails. And in fact, if you don't have your list here and you try to run it, it will say your user is not in the sudoers list. Your incidents will be reported. You may have seen such a thing. If you try to log into a machine and doesn't have any super user privileges or no entry in the super users list, sudoers list, the machine will report back saying The user was not found in the sudoers list, and incidents will be reported to Santa Claus. Yes, that is a bad joke. Unix doesn't report to Santa Claus, but that's what most people that I know use it. Like, the mention is, you don't have a super user privilege, so I will report this to Santa Claus for being a bad boy. Okay, having said, this Cloud Genius user will be added to the super user list by action in a module called line in file. Again, the same line in file. We are basically creating a new line in the list of super users or other sudoers. This line will be created in that file, etc sudoers. And when you create that line, it will allow the Cloud Genius user to escalate its privilege without having to manually type in a password. And we want to make sure that such a line is present in this file with a regular expression matching, beginning with Cloud Genius space all. So all the actions, no password needed, allow it to escalate privilege as and when demanded. And that's what we want to give the permission, the ability for Cloud Genius to operate and escalate as needed, but operate on a low privilege mode. And that's what we are accomplishing in line number 22. Line in file, create a new line in that file, state present, allow the user to become a sudo user. Next line, we have to make sure that our SSH public key is added to the Cloud Genius user in the remote machine. Currently, when we have this machine created, this machine has the private key, has the public key dumped in that location called authorized keys in the root user's location. So if I copy that IP address and try to go there, here, SSH, and I will find that my public key is sitting in that computer in a folder called .ssh, which is actually the folder called root/.ssh. But I want to create this new user, Cloud Genius user. And so I want to make sure that my public key is sitting in this, make a mistake. Don't make a mistake. Okay, there we go. So now in this file, I have this authorized keys is where my keys are sitting. And this is the public key that I have for the ID RSA in my Linux virtual machine. And that key is sitting inside this folder, root.ssh. But I want this to actually be disabled. I want to disable the root user, right? I want to use the Cloud Genius user. So I want to make sure that this public key is sitting in the authorized keys file inside not this folder, but a new folder that I will create for the Cloud Genius user. And that folder will be home Cloud Genius.ssh. In that folder, there will be a file called authorized keys. And that should contain this public key. That's what I'm really accomplishing here, is to add SSH public key to the Cloud Genius user in the remote machine by saying to use a module called authorized key. There is a module for that. So let's go see what that module does. We'll go and search for Ansible module authorized keys. And here it is. Let's go see the description. Authorized keys, authorized key, not keys. It adds or removes an SSH authorized key from a machine. So if you look at an example, and here you can say set authorized key took from file. So you're giving it a file, look it up from this file, home Charlie SSH idrsa.pub, the public key. You want to look it up from that file and make sure to authorize it to the user called Charlie, and make sure that the state of that authorized key is present. That's exactly what we are going to do here. You're looking at the user, Cloud Genius, looking up the key from the local machine, and dumping the public key into the Cloud Genius user as authorized keys state present. It will authorize our new user. It will basically create this file in the home cloudgenius.ssh authorized keys location. In that location, this file will be created with this content. Now that folder doesn't exist right now because the user doesn't exist. We just logged in with SSH as a root user, and I just came out of that, but just saying that that's what will be created as a consequence of this action. Next one, what I want to do is to disallow anybody to connect to the root login. Now that I have a Cloud Genius user, I don't want anybody, even me, to go to the machine like a root user. So I will disable root access for SSH. So this SSH daemon that is running has a configuration called etc ssh config, sshd config. And that configuration for SSH daemon has an expression called permit root login. And by default, in this cloud, in the DigitalOcean example cloud, the default value is yes. And I want to make it no. If you look at that machine right now, and if you go to that location called etc ssh, and then look at the file called ssh config, and you will find that this file has permit root login. This permit root login is yes, because that's the reason why I was able to get in. If this root login permission is disabled, I cannot get in as root user. That's what I want to do. I want to say no here. So that's what I'm doing, is disallowing root access through SSH. If you are sitting on the machine directly in the building for DigitalOcean, you can still log in as root because you're directly on the machine localhost. You're not using SSH to connect to it. But then in the cloud context, nobody allows you to even go there. So that's out of question. You cannot physically go there. The only way you can go is through SSH. And therefore, I want to disallow root logins. I'm basically saying no in this location. And that's what I'm matching a regular expression, permit root login, and saying no. And such a line should be present. And that's what a line in file module will do for me. And since I modify the SSH daemon configuration, I need to notify SSH to restart. And therefore, at the bottom, you will see a restart handler. So here is the handler at the bottom, handlers. And restart SSH will restart the service. State will be restarted. I'll go back up. Here we have, disabling the root access for SSH. Next one, what we're doing is disable and disallow any password-based authentication. Any password, meaning even the Cloud Genius user, should be disabled. Now we know that the password is going to be 123. We have it right there. And we have a shadow for that. And we know that the password is 123. But what if I accidentally let go of the password, or somebody compromises my password, or something like that happens? I don't want anybody, including me, to be able to access the machine using a password. So I want to make sure that this password authentication is said disabled, saying no. So you go back to that same configuration again and look for password authentication, and you should find the actual value. Currently, the password authentication is set to disable already because we assigned a key pair when we created this machine, and therefore the cloud company decided to disable it for us. Password authentication is disabled already, and we want to keep it like that. Now, if you change it to yes, you can potentially get to this machine through password, and that's not what we want. Even if you know the password, you have the correct password 123, which we will create, but it will not let you in using that password, even though you have it, because you're disabling it using the line in file module. Again, Same file, same line in file module. This same file, password authentication is no. It will remain no. We want it to remain no. And so we want to make sure that this line, such a line exists, state present. And then if we have modified it, then we need to restart SSH handler. So restart SSH daemon. So we're asking to notify the handler, and that will notify it and restart at the end of the run. We also want to disable GSS API authentication, because this is something that I may not want in my setup in my company. So I will disallow that, which is basically, again, the same idea here. GSS API authentication, look for the same file here. GSS API authentication is already set, so it's commented. So this is not the idea. So it's going to be creating a new item, GSS API. If you look for that expression, it's only these lines, and all three of them are comments. So it will basically create another item which will say only this segment and say authentication no, because that's what is an expected line in file. GSS API authentication no. The current value doesn't match the regular expression because of this hashtag. This hashtag that we have at the beginning violates the matching regular expression. So therefore, it will assume that there is no such line that begins with the letter GSS API authentication, and therefore it will create a new line in that file that begins with and actually looks like this. You will see that happening in this file as a consequence of this action in line 53. And then at the end, we have the handler, which will basically handle restart. Now, if you run this whole action in one Ansible play, the play is very simple. You just come out of that machine. We are remotely logged into that machine, so we'll come out of that and then run this Ansible playbook called user.yaml, and you just invoke the play. If you want to watch the play by play, you just say --step, and we'll watch it play by play if you like, or we'll just run it straight. But I think watching it play by play is interesting because it gives us a clear idea about what this thing is doing for real. So let's begin play by play, step by step. So first step, gather facts, false. You see that right there, false, which means it is not going to gather facts. It doesn't need to. So we are disabling to show you a demonstration of what gather facts do, or rather not do in this example. It will not bother gathering facts about the machine. It will just invoke. And the first action is to configure a user. The first action in the previous attempt was to gather facts. And this time, just first action is configure a user. And it did not even bother to install package. Oh, hold on. Let me read this. It is going to install. So hold on. The whole play, the play is called. I think I was confused. Right? Roll back. I was confused about the actual play. The play is called configure a user. The play is actually the name of the playbook itself, configure a user. And then the actual action is in line number 14, which is the first action, install package sudo. And that is what is going to do right now. The task number 1 is to install package sudo, yes or no. Or you can skip by saying continue. I don't need to skip. I'll say yes. I know it's already there. Sudo is already installed. This is Ubuntu machine. So it is already there, but I'm just saying yes. And so it is going to install the sudo package and finds out that it already exists. So no change involved, and therefore green color, because it knows that the sudo package is already there on the Ubuntu machine. It already has sudo. So you don't need to do anything. The state did not change and it's green, no change. Next action is add user Cloud Genius. This is the action in line number 19. 19, if you expand, the user called Cloud Genius will be created in that machine with a password and a shell and all that. But before we run this particular action, I want to show you where this thing actually happens. If you open up a command line and go to that machine out there in the cloud. Okay, where is it? Come on, SSH root at IP address. And you will find that there's a list of users, which is where Unix keeps it, which is in the etc password file. You probably know that file, but I'm going to show it to you. This password file is where all the users are stored, the root user and the daemon user and all these guys. And at the bottom, you will find that there is no such user called Cloud Genius. There is a user called www.data, there is a user called nobody, but there is no user called Cloud Genius because it doesn't exist. So we'll create it, Cloud Genius user. And we'll say yes to it. So let it run. So it's going to create that user in the remote machine. And it did. It changed something. So let's go see what it did. And we find that there is a new user here somewhere. Where is it? At the bottom. User called Cloud Genius created with a shadow password and a user ID of 1000, group ID of 1000, and the folder is called home Cloud Genius, and the shell allocated is bin bash. The shell we called out for, specifically called out for bin bash right here. And so that shell was assigned by the user module in Ansible. Next action we want to do is line number 22. We want to make sure that this Cloud Genius user is added to the super user list. So there's this file that doesn't contain an entry for Cloud Genius quite yet. So we will inspect that file. We'll come out of this file. We'll go to the etc sudoers file, and we'll find that this file does not contain any reference to Cloud Genius whatsoever. Pattern not found, which is what the current state is, which is totally cool. But I want to come out of this file. Okay, come out and then run this action. Say yes, continue, please. And so now we are adding the user Cloud Genius to the sudoers list. So it changed, and we should be able to see this user added to this file right here. And you see that the user is at the bottom. Cloud Genius user added in the list of sudoers. And so now Cloud Genius as a user has the ability to escalate privileges without having to manually type the password. Having done this action, we'll come out of this file and then proceed to the next action. What I want to do now is to add the public key to the user called Cloud Genius in that machine. So we'll go to that machine, and in here we will find that there is a new location called home. In there we have a folder called Cloud Genius, and in that folder we have nothing much. We don't have a folder called .ssh yet. We want to create a folder .ssh here, and then create a file called authorized keys containing the public key. So that key needs to be sent to this location in the .ssh folder in a file called authorized keys. And that's what this next action will do for us. What I want to enable is to make sure that I add my public key as an authorized keys to the user Cloud Genius by looking up this particular file, the public key I have in my computer, and make sure that it is present on the remote machine for this user as an authorized key. So I say yes to this action, and it will do my thing, the thing I wanted. So we should see it. It succeeds. It tells me it changed. We should go and examine right there. And in that location, we should now see that we have a .ssh folder. It is hidden, therefore this A is necessary. And then we have the .ssh folder just created just now. And we'll go inside there. And then we will find that there is a file called authorized keys. that contains the exact public key that I have in my local computer. And that's what this particular authorized keys module did for us. So next action is to disallow root access, which means right now I can connect to this machine using root login, just like this. Sorry. Why I have to copy it again or what? I guess I have to copy it again. So right now, let's see root SSH root at, and then copy the IP address and paste it here. It will let me in. No problem there. It did. But at the very next thing I will run, it will disable me from getting in. For a simple reason, is that disables root access. So we will see that happening in our next step. Is asking me to disallow root access for SSH user, sorry, root user, SSH access disallow. I'll say yes. And when I do, it will come back with a yellow saying changed. What did it change? It changes the reference here. So let's go first of all, quit from this and clean up and attempt to connect again. And you will see it failing. And it did not. Hold on, because the SSH daemon did not restart yet. So we have to restart the handler. It hasn't happened yet. That's why it is still letting me in. Even though the file has been edited, SSH daemon has not yet restarted to pick up the change. That's why it let me in. So that is something to understand. So I'm going to keep this open on the side, go back here. Although even though I have managed to edit the file, in that file, made a permit root login as no, and you will see it here. And I will go to that file. Let's see SSH and SSHD, sorry, SSH, and then vi sssd.config, and you will see that permit root login is now no. But even though it is no, it is still letting me in because SSH daemon has not yet restarted. We can restart the daemon manually, and you can see that it prevents access to the root user. But nothing manually is interesting to me. So I'm not doing it manually. Instead, I will do it through this next step, which it will automatically do the handler at the end. So the handler is to be notified for restart. So it will automatically notify, and the handler will run at the end. But for right now, we will go to the next step and look at what the next step is to disallow any kind of password-based authentication. Right now, it does allow password authentication. Let me show you what it means in practice. It means if I go and say SSH and then say Cloud Genius at IP address and let me in. And so it lets me in because my public key is there. My public key is sitting in the .ssh folder already. And I see that this authorized keys contains my public key. What if I delete that file? And now it doesn't, sorry. Now it doesn't exist, right? So I come out of that. And now I attempt to connect as the Cloud Genius user and say, okay, let me in. So it says public key denied, permission denied because the public key is not there. So it is basically preventing me from getting in because our password authentication is already disabled by default. So it is not letting me in. If you want to get in through using a password which you know already called 123 right there, you can, but for that to succeed, you have to make this yes and run the playbook, which is a bad idea. So I'll not do it, but keeping it no. So this next action you're expecting to disallow SSH password authentication is something that is already disallowed. So if I say yes, it will come back with a green response saying no change. And here it comes with a green colored response saying I did not do anything because it is already disabled by default. So I did not do anything. Next action is to disallow GSS API authentication. And this action will be a yellow action because this line, although it is there in that file, but it is commented, which means it doesn't actually exist. The regular expression will not match. So if I say yes to this, you will see something which you expect to see. And that action is, let's go to the right location. So here, and what I expect to see is in this file, if you go look at GSS, and you will find that these lines are, it exists, but it is commented, comment. So now if I say yes to it, or rather let me get quit out of this file first, and then go back here and say yes, it will make a change and tell me it did. So it did, and then it's handling a restart. The restart handler kicked in already, and it restarted and changed 6 and all that. But now let's go back here and examine this file again. You will see that this GSS API entry is actually a new line created. Did not uncomment this line. It doesn't touch it. It doesn't match the pattern, so it's not touching it. But such a line is created in this location, a new line created with a no flag, which is what we expect in line number 57 here. 57, GSS API authentication, no. And we wanted that line, we got the line. We have that line here, but that one is not to be touched because it is a different line. It's a comment. I'm not messing with it. That's how line in file operates. So quitting from here, and now if I attempt to connect to that machine using Ansible, it will fail. Do you know why? If I now attempt to that machine using the same playbook, same exact thing, it just ran it, right? I'm going to run the playbook, boom, just like that. It will fail on me. Do you know why it is failing? I'll give you a hint, and you will tell me why it is failing. You get that? Do you? Read the error and look at my hint and tell me why the same playbook that ran just before just fine and it did exactly what we expected. I'm running the same playbook on the same target machine, no change, and it fails. Why does it fail? It is a good thing that it fails. I expect it to fail, but tell me why it fails, because I want you to understand why it should fail.
Because we don't allow root to sudo anymore.
Yes, we don't allow root user, right? We shut the root user down. And our host file, line number 5, says user root. So that is not allowed. Sorry, man, you cannot come in. Even though you are root, you're not allowed. So it fails. And therefore, if you want it to work, you have to go back here and change it to Cloud Genius. Now it will work. Now you run the playbook, and it will gladly run the playbook. It will do nothing. Oh, no, hold on. There is still, oh, we manually broke something, right? Oops. I think I manually modified something and I forgot to fix it. And as a consequence, the public key that I deleted authorized keys, right? Remember? So this is the problem I have with dynamic exercises. I accidentally, no, not accident, I deliberately delete authorized keys for the Cloud Genius user, and even Cloud Genius user is unable to get in. So if that happens, what do? You can create a new machine, or there's another way. you can go to the works, the cloud, and certain clouds actually give you this method. So this is unique to some clouds. Not all clouds give you this capability. So you saw me that even the Cloud Genius user is failing because I was, playing around and I deleted my authorized key for the Cloud Genius user. So I have no way to get in now. I cannot use the password. I have disabled root login. Only login is Cloud Genius user. But now what? What do I do? So some clouds allow you that. They allow you to actually visit the machine, like physically walk into the machine. Let's go physically walk. It's figurative, right? There's no physical walk involved. But figuratively, you can walk onto the machine and access its console in certain clouds. This is one of them. So here you can go to the cloud and say, give me access to the console. Now here it is giving you access to the console. And you will see that it will let you operate directly on the console. So imagine now you're standing right in front of the machine and typing the root login. It is going to ask you for the password, which you don't know, which is fine, because you can always ask it for a password. So it says, can I get my password for this, please? So you have to go somewhere and ask for a password. And so where is that? Some clouds allow it, others don't. Where is the way to access the password for this machine? Power? No. Power cycle? No. Volume? No. Where is the password thing? Access. Yeah, that should be. Reset root password. Here we go. So this will shut down your droplet, give a new password, and will be sent via email to you. Do you wish to proceed? And I say, yeah, go and do it. So it is going to do it. I'm going to receive an email shortly with the password. I'll go to that machine on the console right here and type in the password. Your droplet needs to be running for the console to work. Currently, the droplet is being shut down. So it'll take 55 seconds for the droplet to shut down, and then 55 seconds for the droplet to start up, roughly speaking. And in the meanwhile, I will receive an email with the password. So let me check my mail. Here's my mail coming up, and I should see an email from this cloud saying that I have the password. No, where is password? Where is the password? Password. Come on, show me the password. Probably not emailed yet. So yeah, it is still going on circles. But root password has been reset and mailed to you. Okay, now I'm expecting to receive it. So I refresh my Gmail. Come on, primary. Come on. Where is the email? Oh, I'm just impatient. I am very impatient. When it comes to email, I'm expecting these things to just run. And I don't see an email. So if I don't see email in like next 30 seconds, I'll abandon the idea and just destroy the machine, because time wasting is a bad idea. So impatience at its best. That's what Nilesh is, highly impatient. So this time if it refreshes and I don't see my password, the machine is killed. I don't see it. 1, 2, 3, forums, nothing. Okay, machine, you go bye-bye. So here we destroy. Certain clouds don't email out the password even if they tell you that they would. This is one such example. So they told me that they will email me and they did not. So I said, okay, bye-bye, kill your droplet. And you create a new droplet. And then you basically try this other service, and Debian this time. So different OS. San Francisco workstation key create, and I'm getting a new IP address. I will use that in the same exercise and run it very, very quickly this time without the step-by-step. And we'll see that it works the same way, except this time we have to go back to the root login, because the first time it has to be the root login because that's the login name you have. And then you have to make sure that you are correctly matching the IP address of the new machine. Right now, this IP address is bad. So you have to get the new one from here, which is that one. and you put it in that location and save. And then you run the play. How do you run? Ansible playbook. Where is that? Come on, I'll just type it. Ansible playbook. And then the play is called user.yaml, and it plays. So it is going to do the thing. First of all, install sudo package in Debian and do the rest. And rest is everything is similar. And then at the end of the run, it will tell me that it did. And then I will try to log in again, try to run the play again. It will fail, which is expected because of the root user. And then we'll modify this to become the Cloud Genius user, and we'll run it again, and it will succeed. And you'll see these things happen live. And the plays are very quick when you don't do this step by step. They're fairly quick. And so you now have the root user modified. We'll run the same play again. It will see it fail, and it fails. Like, it did not fail. What? I wanted it to fail. Come on. How come it did not fail? Oh, this is crazy. I want it to fail and something is wrong. Did I save this? I so wanted it to fail. Let's try a different way. I want to run the root login on this machine directly. SSH root at IP address, and failed. Okay, so it took some time, but it is failing now. In this root login, we have the play that I want to run again, and it should play. It should fail. Please fail. Please fail on me. It is not failing, and I don't understand why it is not failing, honestly. It should fail, but it is not, which is crazy. Crazy, crazy, crazy. I had to go debug and understand why it doesn't fail, which I will do it later on, not right now. The debugging happens later. What I would like to tell you is that it is indeed failing the root login, as you see here, which is exactly what I expected. That part is functional. What I don't understand is the idea that why does Ansible playbook continues to work, continues to successfully connect and everything, and comes back as nothing changed. It should actually error out right there, but it doesn't, which is crazy. Okay, let's modify this user to the Cloud Genius user. And before I run the play, I want to SSH using Cloud Genius user and put in the IP address and then go, and it should let me in, and it did, which is expected. Now, this is good. So this part, I think the conceptual part, the only thing that I don't understand yet is why does the Ansible play continue to succeed even if the root user is used? That part I have to go and investigate. I will do that later. I will now run the same play with the Cloud Genius user in question in my reference in line number 5. The user is Cloud Genius, and I will run the play, and I expect it to also succeed. But the other one should have failed, and it doesn't. That part I do not understand, and we'll find out. This worked, expected to work. Let's put something else here, like a non-existent user, like that, and run the play and see what happens. It failed. When I put root, I want you to fail, and it doesn't fail. It failed this time. I mean, this is crazy. Maybe I did not save or something, or what? I was saving. I saved. Host says root. And then I run the play again, and I fail. Good. I put some random name here, and I save, and I close, and I open again to see that random name. And then I run the play, and I expect it to fail, and it fails. Then I put the name Cloud Genius, and then close and save and open up again to confirm the name, and then run the play, and it should work. And it does. Okay, so now it seems to be okay, rationalized in my mind. But I don't know why the first 2 times it did not fail, which is, again, it's very hard to understand. Like I cannot even reproduce the problem, right? That's the hard part. But this is later discussion, later. Questions at this moment. So do you get a hang of how do you use Ansible to get something to accomplish in basically your mind, whatever you have in mind? Do you get some hang of the tool as to what it's doing for us? Do you find it easier compared to Chef?
Code-wise, it is easy, but internal, it's doing a lot.
It is doing a lot because these modules that you see here, these Ansible modules that you, let's see, Ansible modules. All these modules that we have, working with modules, the module index, these are the real heavy horses that are doing the hard work.
Yeah.
They have written this piece of a bunch of code, which is where the crux of Ansible comes from, is modules. There's another beautiful thing in Ansible, I think, that you should look at. And I may have received an email finally. If not, I just give up. They never send me an email. I thought they will send me an email, but no. No, it doesn't. Whatever. Fine. So these Ansible modules, like modules, there is this other concept that is, I think, also very important to understand in Ansible, which is the idea that is similar to supermarket. You know, in supermarket, you go and grab a playbook, or rather, a cookbook. And there are a bunch of people who have created a bunch of cookbooks for us, and we can just use them. They're open source. Pretty similar to that in Ansible. There is a thing called Galaxy. And in there, what you have is a ready-made code that people have developed that is available here in the Galaxy that we can use with Ansible. This thing is called roles in Ansible. So we have roles available in Galaxy that we can use with Ansible readily and make it easy for us, even easier for us. And that idea is called a role that you can use from Galaxy. So you will go to Galaxy and find out what this thing does. So in the Galaxy, there is a website called galaxy.ansible.com. Ansible is open, and I think they got bought by Red Hat. So it's now a part of Red Hat Ansible. And here is the Galaxy is the hub for finding and reusing and sharing Ansible content. So here you can search whatever you like to search. And so imagine if I want to set up a large-scale cloud infrastructure with a bunch of machines all configured to run Docker containers. So what do? I write my code in Ansible. I can do that way. Or I can use a ready-made piece of code available to me probably here in the Galaxy. So I'll say Docker and find out what do I have. And so I find that there are these packages available that I can possibly use. And so I am going to look at some of them and see if I can use some of them. And so one of the things that I have used in the past, and I would like to get to that, and I don't see it in this list, there are 73 pages to look for. And so what I will do is, maybe narrow it down. I still don't find it. Then I will resort to my memory because I know the name of the person who created it. His name is that name. And so we'll just go use that one. That's a ready-made role available in Ansible. And this is the name of the gentleman. His name actually is Paul Durivage, or whatever that thing is. He goes by the name Angstward. And he has developed a role that I want to use as an exercise. And so it is that role available in the Galaxy. And what this role does is Let's go see. It's a comprehensive and ideally a sane way to install Docker on Ubuntu machines. Beautiful. That's exactly what I wanted. So I want to read the README file. And here it goes. It says install Docker on these guys and Ubuntu and Debian. And so that's great. How do you use it? You just run a task like this. That's it. That's all you need to do. And so it will install a task and basically make the machines ready for use with Docker containers. So that is a basic use of using that role called Docker Ubuntu is the name of the role, and angstwad is the name of the creator. So I want to install this particular role in my workstation. I will be able to do that very simply by looking at an example that I have created already for you. And that example is here. And what this does, let's see that. Yeah, so this is the example. And we have how much time we have? 15 minutes. Okay, I think we should be able to finish it. I just had to rush through it a little bit, but we should be able to finish. And if it goes beyond like 5 or 10 minutes, it might, but we'll find out. So coming out of this and then cloning the repository that I have, I'm going to give it to you in Slack chat, that repository that I will grab and I will clone it. So I'll open that link, by the way, from Slack, and I reach here. When I click on that Slack link, I reach on this page, I clone it, and I grab the code. That code I want to use with my workstation, and I will git clone it, and then use it. So the folder is called Docker Ansible. So I will go there, Docker Ansible, and open up in Atom Editor to examine what we have in there. So Atom is opening up right now. And inside Atom, we find that we now have we have a Ansible configuration, which you know already. It defines the place where I'm storing my machines, my inventory of machines. Like I can have more than many. So just dump all these machines inside a file called hosts. And the file this time is sitting in a folder called inventory/hosts. And so that is this location in which I am storing my hosts. And here I have a bunch of hosts already called out. And 1, 2, 3, 4, you can do basically whichever cloud you like, it doesn't matter. You have to create those machines in a variety of clouds. Like I have a machine in Google Cloud, a machine in Amazon Cloud, Azure Cloud, DigitalOcean Cloud, or you can basically name these whatever you like, as long as you can call them basically whatever you like, as long as you don't call them late for dinner. Now that is a Boston area joke. If you are from the Boston area, you will understand that joke. I don't know if any of you is from Boston, but I used to be there. So the joke goes like, you can call me anything you like as long as you don't call me late for dinner. That's the joke. Okay, so basically name anything you like, any machine, any cloud you like, doesn't matter. As you get your IP addresses correct, get your usernames correct here. So for example, Google Cloud, the name has to be Ubuntu. In Amazon Cloud, the name has to be Ubuntu. In Azure Cloud, you can pick your name. So the name can be Nilesh if you like. In DigitalOcean Cloud, the name has to be root. And in late for dinner machine, which can be a machine in your garage, the name can be whatever you like. I chose root. And then you provide a private key file corresponding to these machines. And sometimes you have to decide whether you want to use Python 3 or not. So I'm just using Python 3 across the board because I don't know whether they have Python 2 or not. So I just assume that they have Python 3 and just use it. So that's why I call it out like that. So we have to basically have machines out there available for us in our inventory of machines that we want to use as our Docker foundations. And those servers will be running Docker containers for us. So what this particular exercise is going to do for us is to run this Docker play. See, the play is so simple, really, really simple. There's only one action, actually one role play, which is this, line number 7. That's it. It just converts an Ubuntu machine into a Docker host. All the machines you have in your inventory will then become Docker machines. So Docker capable machines is what you want to accomplish. So you will run this play here, and it will target all your hosts in the inventory that you keep and escalate privileges to become a super user so that it will actually be able to install Docker and will run this role. Now this role has a name from the same gentleman that I mentioned from the browser. So what I want to do is to understand how do I bring that role down. So what you want to do is use the Ansible Galaxy command to install the particular role you have in mind that you see from the Galaxy website. Here. No, not here. Here. So here they tell you how do you invoke. So it tells you installation step is to install Ansible Galaxy, install this particular role. What it does is when you install this particular role, it will create a folder called roles and dump this role inside that folder. So you will see it now happening. When I run that one, you will see that this Docker Ubuntu role is getting pulled from and is getting dumped in the roles folder right there. Here it comes. All these things. It is pretty similar to, Burkshelf going to the supermarket and grabbing a ready-made cookbook for you. Same concept. We use the Galaxy tool to install a role. We have the role now. We installed it. It is now available, so we can use it. How do you use it? You just say Ansible playbook Docker YAML. And what does that do? It runs this playbook. What does the playbook contain? Contains one role. Just invoke the role. That's it. That's all it takes. So running is fairly simple. You just have to have machines first. And so we don't have any machines right now. So let's go create a bunch of machines in multiple clouds. So we'll go begin with Amazon Cloud, and you pick the cloud and you choose what you want. And I'll just go create a couple of machines. So we'll go here in one of the clouds, AWS. What's it called? Console. Yeah, here, one cloud. And we log in. Come on, log in. And token. And we get a machine. And we start that machine. Come on. Do it quick, launch. And hello, Ubuntu, please. Ubuntu, please. There. And give me a machine. T2 micro is good enough. Review and launch. Brother, go back a previous step. Cancel out. Let me check the security groups that are important. Otherwise, I cannot access my own machine. So T2 micro, configure details, go to my default VPC. Any subnet is fine. Get sub auto assign public IP is true. I want to get a public IP. I want to connect to it. And then add some storage and add some tags and add some configuration security groups. Use an existing group. This one is good. It allows me to access that. The 22 is open. And I go forward, review, and launch. And in this cloud, I'm in Oregon Cloud, and I'm going to launch it and give it my public key called workstation. And then I launch the instances. The machine is getting created. I'll go to my second cloud. And in that second cloud control panel, I will have another machine created. If I have any machines there, I will delete them. And I will destroy this one and create a new one. And so destroying this, creating a new machine right there, and say create a droplet, and get me an Ubuntu machine with a 1 GB memory and San Francisco location and this key pair, and start. So So I'm starting a new machine, getting 2 IP addresses, one from here and the other one from here. We're waiting for these IPs to show up. I'm going to grab this IP address from this location, copy it, and put that in my host entry for Amazon right there. Paste, save. And then DigitalOcean IP address, I want to grab it, put it right there. So going to that DigitalOcean cloud, grabbing the IP address, come on. There we go. So copy, bring it here, and paste. So now I have 2 machines ready. You can do it any number of machines that you might have. So just make sure that you are structured appropriately. For other machines that I don't have, I will just hide them. And hiding basically is to comment them out. So now I have actively 2 machines, Amazon and DigitalOcean. The other clouds are not active. So line number 2 is active, line number 4 is active. And what I want to do now is run this play. This playbook, you can run it like this. Ansible playbook, Docker YAML. So I'll copy that line, run it here, and say, play, and let it go. So it goes, and it does its thing. What it does, let me just run it. But before I run, I want to quickly check a couple of host variables, because that is something that is important. And I'll talk about it as it runs. So I just wanted to check the naming and the usernames are correct. And then we let it run. So we let it run. Now I'll talk about this thing that is currently did I say yes to it? I think I accidentally typed a enter. Okay, I think I need to break it. So do it again. And question yes. And okay, hold on, break it again. I think I have to go a host key checking disable somewhere here. Host key checking is false. That will expedite the host key checking issue that I have here. It's not an issue, but it just expedites. So I don't have to type in yes or no. That's what I just did in line number 6 here in the Ansible configuration to disable host key checking. Now it is doing its thing. It is going to make sure that these 2 machines are ready for Docker containers. That's what's going on. So while it does its thing, what I want to do is to tell you that I have this extra information here about host variables. What this does is accounts for the fact that these various machines I have, the Amazon machine and the DigitalOcean machine, they're slightly differently structured in that the username is different. The username here is Ubuntu, and the path to the home location is home Ubuntu, whereas the username here is root, and the path to the home location is /root. That is different in the 2 machines. So if that is the case, in a bunch of machines, you have to call out these variables as differences of usernames, Nilesh versus Ubuntu versus root, according to what you have chosen in your machine names, and have those host variables call out extra parameters so that this particular role will actually allow the user to be operating like a Docker user. Docker runs in a super user privilege mode. It is not a regular user mode. So you have to have the user, in this case, Ubuntu user, be able to escalate privileges as and when needed. So this Docker Ansible play that is running right now here is something that expects to know the name of the host location and the home location for that username for every host. And that is why I'm doing it here is in this example, calling out host variables like that. So for late for dinner, you can choose whatever you like. It's a custom machine you create. DigitalOcean, they give you root user and /root location. Azure gives you whatever you like. So Nilesh, home Nilesh. Amazon gives you the name Ubuntu by default. So the home user, so username is Ubuntu and the home location is home Ubuntu. And you will see that this playbook is fairly extensive, even though the actual action was simple, just to invoke a role. But under the hood, it is doing a bunch of things for us. It is actually installing all the necessary things needed to make that machine run Docker containers. And as you begin creating large-scale enterprise footprint, you will want to automate, and you will want to set Docker containers appropriate to your design. This is just one of the ways to do it. This is the Ansible way to accomplish that task. Even in Ansible, there are 100 other ways you can come up with. This is yes.
Last week, we used the ECS Amazon to create the Docker containers. So why do we have to go this way to get Docker containers?
You don't have to.
Okay.
There's no such reason that you have to do it this way.
But the ECS way isn't way easier to get a Docker container?
Yes. ECS. You said ECS, right?
Easier.
Oh, okay. I thought, are you talking about this thing?
Yeah, isn't this give you a Docker container?
Yes, it also gives you Docker containers. But this Elastic Container Service from Amazon is specific only to Amazon. Right? It is just Amazon technology. You will not find this method of using containers in any other cloud. What I am going to show you, or what I am showing you right now, is a method that will work in any cloud of your choice.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So yeah, even my internal cloud. Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
Internal cloud, external cloud, DigitalOcean cloud, Vultr cloud, God knows cloud. You bring your own cloud tomorrow, that also works. It is open source based, so it will run anywhere you feel like. So you don't have to get stuck with these guys or anybody, right? You want to get freedom. That's what open source is about. It is about freedom to choose what you want, as opposed to getting dictated by a company that you have to do it their way. No, tell them, no, I'm not doing it your way because I'm doing it my way. And you can go the highway. Just tell them that exactly, because they don't need to dictate what you want. You decide what you want for your company. And that's how you should run your business, not them. Don't get stuck with a company. That doesn't make sense. Okay. So this thing seems to be still doing it, but should finish very quickly. And at the end, we will have these machines ready with Docker. It's taking time because I think I chose cheap machines.
So the Docker Swarm can do the same functionality, create a whole bunch of Docker containers,
Yes.
or it's different? Okay, so it's different way.
Swarm is the next step. We will get to a Swarm exercise also, but we're not on Swarm yet. We are just getting Docker. We'll then go to Docker Swarm. We'll also, by the way, it finished. So it has finished successfully on 2 machines. You see that the play recap shows you that it has succeeded doing it on Amazon. We will have 10 changed, 24 actions, 10 changed. Same thing on DigitalOcean, 2 clouds, 2 machines ready with Docker. We can now go visit these machines and find out whether they have successfully set up Docker already or not. So we can go to one of the machines, like here, for example. Let's get the IP address from this guy and see if that machine has Docker installed. So let's go there. SSH, root at IP address. Root at IP address. Go connect. And it's connected. Do I have Docker there? You bet. It is there. Do I have any images? It's empty, but it is running Docker. Docker images will be empty. So I have that action available. Now let's go to the second cloud. SSH root, not root, Ubuntu. With the second cloud, his username is Ubuntu. This cloud has this IP address. So grab that, copy it, bring it here, and paste it. And what do you see? Docker ps-a. It's there. Docker images. It is also there. So we have a method, a systematic method of running Docker containers in any machine, in any cloud, in your garage, in your company, in your private cloud, public cloud, God knows whatever. It will work. This is a general purpose method, so you don't get stuck with a company. Awesome. I will now wait for questions. I will stop recording.